How's it going, Kyle?
Hey, Jake. I'm all right. How are you?
Doing very well. So, what's going down today?
Oh man, I am churning and burning this week. Lots of
Yeah.
people getting into business. How about you?
Uh, I am really busy. To everyone out there, my name is Jake, and this is Kyle, and we are interested to find people out there on Reddit and LinkedIn who are interested to talk about business and entrepreneurship and starting a business. I am starting a fintech business myself. We are pitching for investment, and I've got a number of people out there, Kyle, that would like to work with us, but our
Nice.
development is not easy. It's going a little bit slowly. A lot of my team of developers are working part-time doing sweat equity. And so things kind of move forward and then wait and move forward. So things are moving forward slowly. And I've got people out there saying they're kind of like, hey, are you going to resell that? And I'm excited to
Resell
get
what?
and sell it. Well, I was speaking to a company yesterday, and I was speaking to them about what I was building and how it was going to help me to better engage with customers and have digital kind of underwriting, and also have an element of having like an OCR system that recognizes documents and relabels them. And they were like, "Oh, I hate relabeling documents." He was like, "I've done this 20 years. I can't imagine how many times I've relabeled someone's tax returns for a financial package for underwriting."
Huh.
And like, "Are you going to be reselling that?" And I was like, "We would like to. We would like to be doing that.
There's a
Definitely a market out there."
market for relabeling. So it sounds like you're really marketing your own business for launch and figuring out some interesting things that people are demanding.
Yeah, well, in solving a problem for myself, it helps me run a better fintech company. It helps me to better offer finance to customers who are looking to buy equipment with finance. But yeah, the whole point of that was to get a product polished and up and running that we could offer to other people. It's just more on the roadmap than what we're able to do today.
Another revenue stream potentially.
Hopefully, yeah. I mean, I have a strong belief in what we're building, that there's a market out there and a lot of people that we could help and revenue streams, but we've just got to take it one day at a time. Or I need
Hmm.
to raise that money so that I can really hire people full time to go build it. That would be the dream. That would be good stuff.
What would you tell people that are in the space that you're in if they wanted to get started? What's the first thing they should focus on?
There's a lot of people actually on Reddit that often ask, like, how do I break into fintech, or how do I get into it? And I think people do get lucky, particularly younger people who break into the industry who are good at kind of like SaaS sales. There's good
Hmm.
opportunities to get involved. For me, I was struggling to get into the industry. I wanted to get into fintech and to get some experience, and I had to go out and get a master's degree to break into it. And even that didn't work for me. I
Really?
had to like go out and start my own business.
Huh.
Um,
What
but
was a
for young,
master's degree in?
I got a master's degree in digital innovation for fintech.
Neat. That's pretty cool.
But for young people, and like for my kids, Kyle, like I'm really interested to encourage them to get into coding earlier.
Hmm.
I think I think coding can help anyone. Like coding is just going to be such a big part of our world.
Oh, it is. I wholeheartedly agree. Kind of preaching to the choir a little bit. I learned my first programming language when I was 14,
Yeah,
and
what
I
was
was
it?
hooked. I was
What was
hooked.
it back then that people kind of coded?
That was back then. Wasn't that long ago. I mean, I was still typing on a keyboard. I wasn't doing punch cards.
Yeah.
No, but that was AppleSoft Basic. You
Okay.
know, so I learned Basic on the Apple, and yeah, that was fun. And it kind of hooked me in. And that was in high school, and then I went to college, and I didn't know what to do. And I took this, sat down at this computer program that kind of, if you type in it, like, do you want to do this? Do you like that? It'll sort of guide you on what you want to do for a career. And what I realized is as I was going through the program, typing in all my, uh, answers to their questions, that I was thinking through the logarithm in my head. And I realized I should be doing this. I should be writing things like this. And so I gamed it so that it told me to be a systems analyst or something like that, and went and got an MIS degree. So more coding. Yeah.
And
And, the
did you
thing
do
is
some of
though,
that? Did you do some of that professionally, or it seems like you went in another direction and got into sales at some point?
well, I mean, I did software development professionally for, you know, actually hands on the keyboard for about a decade. Um, and then, for pay, and then running software companies for another decade, doing more biz dev and CEO type roles. And I kind of got away from that, but it's still fun. I still sling code just for like fun projects, to create my own stuff. But
You
that's
have
the thing, for young people, don't get too hooked on like one particular language, because every 3 years you kind of have to throw it all out and learn something new. But take what you've learned before. Everything that I learned in AppleSoft Basic applies to everything, a lot of things that you can learn today, like Python. So, speaking of which, that's a plug for Python. That's a good first language these days.
Python's a really common language now, and it's really common in fintech. I forget that you have a really fascinating background. You've got a really varied, and you've done a lot of different things.
Mm, yeah, it's what happens when you get bored easily.
Could you code something out today? Could you go build something, you think, or you'd have to kind of really dust off the?
Yeah, I mean, I've written scripts and stuff in Python, and Bash scripts and things like that. For just the stuff that I do for ham radio. It's all for fun. But yeah, I do that. I'm not the
'Cause
best
I
at it.
think I think coding for young people is a very important thing. I think it doesn't matter what you're getting into. Even if you're going to be a vet, if you have some ability to code, you could work on your own website. You could get, forms created for your customer, or an algorithm doing something for your business. And I think coding is going to be a part of everyone's life. But
Yeah,
now more than ever, they're doing this low code, no code stuff where you can kind of drag and drop all the stuff you need. And I think that will
yeah,
continue to be kind of a powerful tool in the coming
yeah.
years.
And they had that when I started too. They would call it 3GL and 4GL, fourth generation language or whatever, where it's a lot of objects that you can just sort of repackage and drag and drop and stuff. But they've come a long way with that now. But I think that the mindset of being able to instruct a machine to do something that people actually want is a great way to learn how to think, right? Because that's that's pretty much what we're doing. Is all the machines are taking over the tasks that we just don't want to do. Um, and so being able to tell them what to do is kind of nice. Um, I even told, suggested to my son that, hey, take some programming languages. If you like it, great. If not, you can always move on. But at least you tried it and you know what it's about, right? And you can learn how to think that way. So I
Have
really
some
think that anybody can do it.
have some basis to it. I started to learn Python code. I wish I had more time to get back into it, actually. But I don't think I was one of those people that really had a natural aptitude.
Yeah. It takes time, it's like, you have to practice at it, like being a musician.
One of the guys I work with down in Asia, was just self-taught. He just taught himself everything, and he can build big computer programs now. And he built his own kind of OCR system. And I was like,
That's
where
amazing.
where did you go to school? How did you learn all this? He's like, just taught myself. Just some people just have that aptitude and that
Yep.
insight to go build stuff that can help people.
Yeah, that's true. And but I'd say that, equally as important is good bedside manner and the ability to relate to people, because you can build a great mousetrap, but if you aren't listening to customers, nobody's going to come.
That I think is after having taken my master's degree, I thought that was one of my strengths, that I was a little bit of a bridge between worlds, because you have, engineers and developers who are really good at building things, but they don't know the space, and they don't know sales, and they don't necessarily know the customers. And you have leadership who, as well, they know the business very well. They know how to make money, how to keep it, how to keep the exposure safe by having, certain credit boxes. But, they don't really know what development is and what to tell those people to build. And those developers can build, the best product that they tell them to build, but they'll
Hmm.
never really know sales the way someone will. And so I felt like I was a little bit of a bridge between that. Like I can't develop, I can't build anything, but I know just enough about it to understand the language they're speaking and
Yes.
what they're capable of.
You can talk the talk, and that's half the battle. The other half is just showing up. I'm not kidding. You ever see those people that get like perfect attendance awards in elementary school or whatever, or like Boy Scouts? That's a thing. That's people diss it as like something that's stupid, but in adulthood, just showing up is half the battle, right? The other half of the
Yeah,
battle is listening. That's why you got 2 ears and 1 mouth. You should be listening more than you talk.
that was a very important lesson I learned along the way in telemarketing and calling people.
You did
Just that
that, huh?
two ears, one mouth. You need to listen. You don't get on a phone and just talk over people and expect that they're going to buy stuff. You have to really ask questions and listen to them and hear what their problem is before you can
Yeah.
provide a solution. And I remember when someone said that to me.
Yeah. I think that people who are really good salespeople are good at asking questions, is what I've noticed.
Yeah.
Um, that they're good at listening. It's I was thinking about your pitching, your marketing, kind of shift a little bit. Um, how do you market your business to find customers? Uh, and I imagine there's probably a couple of channels you're contemplating. Which one do you think is the lowest hanging fruit, or the one that's going to get the most traction fast?
So I've always seen that if you want direct customers, people who are buying equipment, Facebook is kind of the space for that. And my
Really?
go-to-market strategy is really to find people who are selling equipment. And for me, LinkedIn is really the channel. And so I've
Oh,
heavily used kind of automations to do outreach in LinkedIn. That used to be more effective 5 years ago. Now I think everyone's got an automation, and LinkedIn's a bit noisy, and everyone kind of gets annoyed by it. But it's still been
yeah.
effective for me in some ways to reach out to enough people that at least some of them get a message that they're interested to respond to.
Hmm. Yeah, it is funnel building is what we called that in grad school. You have the funnel and you pour in all your suspects in the top and, you know, get a contact and finally get to a close. Guess it's kind of similar to a pipeline. Um,
Yeah.
the automation. So how's that working out for you? With like, how do you automate outbound contact on LinkedIn?
There's a bunch of programs out there. Expandy is one, Connected is another with a K, and there's a few programs that you pay for. And I think that the important thing is that you have to write a really clever sequence of messaging that doesn't come off as too automatic, but you can't have it too individualized either because you have to reach out to a broad group. One of the most
Yeah.
important things is the search you run. You need Sales Navigator to run a good search, so there's also the additional cost of that. But if you put in the work and you really try and you come up with some clever messaging, um, it will reach out to enough people that someone out there is interested. But
Yeah.
I feel like there's a time limit on it as well. Like it kind of takes a week to warm up, works really well for 2 or 3 weeks, and then it kind of the search gets off the path.
Yeah.
So it takes a lot of work and maintenance to keep it updated, and you really need a sales team there ready to deal with it and take it on. And at the moment, I'm low on time.
Yeah.
Big on
I guess
big
you're
on
that guy,
inspiration,
right?
big on aspirations, but I'm low on time to do everything I would like to do in a day.
Yeah. I hear you. I do some work on LinkedIn, some outbound stuff, but it's all by hand for the most part.
Yeah,
Um, and it's just my business in particular is really high touch. Like
yeah,
the trust and rapport is super important. Um, and so it, I haven't found a good way to automate that, and I'm not sure that I want to. You know,
yeah.
I think authenticity for me, just personally and professionally, is super important. Um, but it puts limits on my outreach.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on the industry, and it just depends on your own personal go-to-market strategy. But I mean, you
Yeah.
you counsel a lot of businesses. What do you tell some of the new businesses that are trying to get their franchise up off the ground? Is there a particular technique that works, or is it just different business to business, region to region?
Yeah, a lot of when I'm working with my clients, the things that I can do, there's things that the franchisor brings to the table, and there's things that I can do to make sure that this candidate is a good fit for that business, right? So I like to just check in with them conversationally and see, do you have a good bedside manner? Are you more of an operations person or a salesperson? Because everybody's different. Now, if there's a guy that comes to me and says, I'm really good at sales, I really love networking, being out in the community, talking to people, I'm jazzed by that. Um, I tend to point them in the direction of businesses where the people who are doing the best are doing exactly those types of things. A lot of B2B stuff, B2B professional services, and things where they might be big ticket items and you can spend more time actually personally in the field, cultivating relationships and referrals. But for those big B2C companies where either it's a retail location, like a shoe store or something, or a beauty business or a gym, or a home consumer service business like maid service or something, it's all about, you know, door hangers and promotions and, signage and internet, SEO and, Google reviews and all of that. It's got to be operationalized. And those businesses are really good for people that may not have as good or don't have a desire to do that outbound stuff, like the things that you're really good at, for example. I mean, if you're done telemarketing, it takes a certain special human to be able to do that and not curl up on the floor at the end of the day. Some people don't
Tel-
have it.
Telemarketing is not for the faint of heart. There's
No.
definitely a lot of life lessons in doing telemarketing. Are you good with SEO? Can you actually dig in and help people to do that? Or
I usually refer that out to folks.
yeah,
One of my candidates actually got into an SEO company. So they are a, a new referral source. So yeah, but I don't do it myself. Um, I have a whole different set of things to think about, but um, and a lot of people, when they get into a franchise, that franchise is going to have a relationship with an SEO provider, right? So they've got a mix that's known to work, and they know that the first thing you need to do, any franchise worth their salt, is going to be a marketing juggernaut for their industry. And they're going to come out with all guns blazing. They've got a mix that's known to work. It still needs to be managed and tweaked, but you can dashboard this type of thing in a business to consumer realm so that a new owner hits the ground running. The first thing they do is turn on the marketing engine so they can start to fill the funnel, because it's a race to get to, revenue and break even, like any
yeah.
business. The faster, the better.
Well, I
And I
think
think that
particularly for a franchise, that first 6 months must be a tough period.
it is a tough period. It's the valley of death is what we call it, because it really is uncomfortable. You're putting in a lot of capital and time, and you're not getting anything out on the other end immediately. You're not getting a paycheck or anything. You know what it's like in the startup world where it's pre-revenue or pre-profit. It can be maddening.
Does it tend to get easier for startups after franchises after a certain benchmark, after a year, after 2 years?
It does. It does. And that's really what people are shooting for. What's the big attraction to it is that you can look at evidence from other owners that have done it before you and ask them questions and see who's doing things differently and getting a different result, and then decide for yourself, how am I going to do this? Um, or is this the right concept, or should I be looking at a different one? I'll give you a really good example. This is something that a client shared with me. He was looking at two different businesses, and this guy was coming from the military. And each of these businesses had somebody on their staff at the corporate level that came from the military. And that was really great because they were speaking the same language. But one of them said, "Hey, our business is like being a platoon sergeant. You got a small number of people. You're a highly agile squad." The other guy was like, "Our business is like being a first sergeant of a whole company. You have to deal with a whole lot more people." And my candidate sat back and thought, I think I'd rather be a first sergeant than a platoon sergeant. And that was informed the decision in some way as to how, in a language that he could understand, uh, how he should be behaving when he's running that business. And that helped him decide which way to go.
I think it's important for leaders to know what they're good at and what they're not, and that's one of the things you don't find in the corporate world, right? The people that sometimes rise up in management in the corporate world are good at covering their butt more so than they are at
Yep.
knowing what their strengths and weaknesses are. I had met one CEO. Well, he wasn't actually a CEO. He was the CEO, and he built this business, and it was a software development business. And he realized that um, he didn't like to be CEO. He didn't like to manage all the people. He didn't like to hire. His skills,
Yeah.
like he was really fascinated by business and by building things. And so even though it was his company, he hired in a CEO above him.
Yeah.
He hired someone who I guess technically worked for him, but ran the business. And he just realized that, like, this is my skill set. These are my strengths. And I need someone that's good at these other things. And, what if we
Yeah.
just bring someone else in?
That totally makes sense. In fact, the last tech company that I worked at, that same situation came in. The founder was really good at ideation and building a thing. And at some point, when you reach a stage in the growth of the company where it starts to do the hockey stick, he knew that he was outside of his, comfort zone and hired in a CEO. He still became like the chief strategy officer, the founder, but the CEO eventually took that company public, right? And managed it through a growth of, from the 10 to 100 million stage, right? And there's a certain mindset of person. And you know what helped actually? The guy who came in had a sales background as the new
Yeah.
CEO. And so he knew how to drive revenue really high, and he really built that sales organization. And that was something that the founder wasn't all that good at, but like many highly self-actualized individuals, he was self-aware enough to realize, okay, this isn't for me, but I can bring in a guy who can. And ultimately, everybody wins. The pie gets bigger for everyone.
Do you ever have people that come to you that want to start a franchise but don't want to run it? Maybe they just stake it, or maybe they have a son they want
Yeah,
to run it, or is that
yeah, I
successful?
do. I do, and it's problematic. That's the classic case of, you know, I'm the money guy and I've got this other guy, or I'm looking for somebody to be the ops guy, to manage it day to day, and I just want to dump money in it and get my return. That's a weird relationship. I think anything that is an equity partnership should be treated with the seriousness of a marriage. And if you're coming in, it's basically a sugar daddy type relationship where I've got all the money and you're going to make me happy, that type of thing. I don't see it
There's gotta
end
be a
well
lot of
very
pressure.
often. Yeah, I don't see it end well that often.
No, so you don't like to get
Not in a
involved in those, I
franchise
imagine.
model.
Yeah.
No, I think that's better off suited for the type of thing that you're doing, which is why I imagine you're putting so much effort into, finding the investors who might have a board seat or something, but they're not going to come in and be CEO. That's you, right? You're the
Yeah,
man on
no,
the ground.
definitely. Yeah, when we raise money, we've got to be very careful of who we get as an investor, and we're looking for someone who can invest in the business, who's also connected in the industry or has connections or can be involved in some way that beyond just finances, means they have an understanding of our business and hopefully some way that they can help us as well along the way.
Yeah, I mean, and that's a relationship that's for the long term, just like a marriage, right? You want to make sure that your interests do not diverge.
It becomes your work wife and your work brother-in-law and your work father. And you
Yeah,
get in bed with these people, and you hear nightmare stories all the time. I mean, that's one of the great things about Reddit and Reddit startup and Reddit fintech is people get involved all the time talking about the nightmares they have breaking up with co-founders, and it's very common.
yeah,
One co-founder loses interest, one co-founder gets offered another job, another co-founder has a kid and needs to focus on full-time work, and
yep,
it's heartbreaking, some of the stories you read on there.
yeah. I, I've I've seen that happen, and that's why in the beginning, if I run into anybody who wants to have a partner, I want to know the details of the partnership, and I suggest to them, figure out your partnership agreement even before you get into or decide a business, right? Because if you can't execute on a partnership agreement, you can't run a business together, and that
Yeah,
includes all the divorce clauses and everything. Because just assume that your
it's
interests are going to
like a
diverge at
business
some
like a
point.
business prenup.
Yeah, it's a business prenup. That's exactly what it is. Get that prenup. Get that divorce clause. Right? The worst thing you wanna have happen is a business that's going great, your interests diverge, and it's worth a ton of money, and you didn't have the right divorce clause, and so now you're chasing each other's tails in a dogfight, and meanwhile, the business is asleep at the wheel and losing value, right? It's just like a real divorce. It's expensive to disagree.
I can only
Um,
imagine.
Yeah.
Well, Kyle,
Well,
we
we're
are
coming
coming up
about
on
at the end. You wanted to get parting thoughts?
yeah, I was just going to say we're just coming up on the top of the half hour. To any listeners that we do have, we typically are doing Wednesday afternoons. We're doing a little business talk. We are calling this the Founders Way. My name is Jake, and this is Kyle. And Kyle, it sounds like you're having a great week, man. I hope that continues for you, and I look forward to catching up with you next week. And anyone else that may be out there interested to ask questions.
You too. Keep the faith.
Have a great afternoon, sir. I look forward to speaking
All
to you
right.
soon.
You too. Bye-bye.